I was a 17-year-old girl at the time the story took place. It all started at my aunt's house. She was hosting a party. There were a lot of people, food, drinks, etc. My aunt lived there with all her kids, two of which were my little cousins of 7 and 5 years of age, and also a Hispanic man in his early to mid 40s who was renting the back guest house. We'll just call him Carlos, as well as another man who rented the room next to Carlos. This Carlos guy was very weird and awkward, and I definitely felt very uncomfortable, as he would always give me this off-putted, perverting look. However, we never really talked much, so I never made anything out of the situation and would avoid him as much as possible. Anyway, back to my aunt's party. It was very crowded, people dancing everywhere, having a good time. Then I noticed a strange smell coming from somewhere. Couldn't really make out what or where the smell was coming from. So I asked my mother if she knew what the smell was, and she said maybe it's something from the party, and we both ignored it for the rest of the night. The next day, my aunt called me to see if I can babysit my two youngest girl cousins. So I went over to her house and took care of them, at least until my aunt came back. I remember the girls were playing in the room, and I was in the bathroom fixing my hair, when suddenly that horrendous smell came back, and very strong. I couldn't help but wonder what it was and where it came from. My aunt later came home, and I told her to clean her house because it smelled disgusting right before I left. As I was leaving, the other man that rented next to Carlos told us that he keeps hearing scratching sounds coming from Carlos' side. The only logical explanation we can come to is that since Carlos was an alcoholic, maybe he was just being a strange drunk as usual. I got home that night and I was in the bathroom getting ready to go to bed. I was changing shirts when suddenly I get this feeling as though I'm being watched by someone. I peeked through the opening of my bathroom door and there he was. Carlos staring at me, watching me, so I screamed my lungs out and shut the door. Keep in mind, we're in my house, and Carlos lives in my aunt's guest house, which was over 30 minutes away. No way in hell. After a while, I gathered enough courage to open the door and go outside to check to see if he was there. This time I had a weapon, and I was ready in case he charged me. All of a sudden, I get this phone call from my aunt. Hurry, come quick, take the girls, hurry, it's an emergency. I didn't know what to think, so I rushed to my aunt's house scared for my life, or worrying that something really bad happened to her. When I got there, I saw a whole police squad, the fire departments, as well as the coroner at the back guest house where Carlos lives. I went inside my aunt's house to grab my baby cousins, and that gross smell was now stronger than ever. When I went to ask my aunt what had happened, Carlos, she said, they found him in his room dead. They believe he died 6 days ago of a heart attack in his sleep. I could not believe it. I didn't tell her, of course, what I saw back at my house, but it was very obvious that his spirit was watching me in the living room. I take it as he was trying to give me a sign that he had already passed on. I never told anyone about this experience ever since. I'm 37 from a small town in Northern California. This story took place about 10 years ago. I had a boyfriend whose name I will keep private for personal reasons, but we'll just call him Mike. I met Mike when we were both in school. We dated for a couple weeks until eventually he became my boyfriend. Mike and I were always interested in the paranormal. We would always go out to watch those ghost shows on TV and even went into a few rumored places to be haunted just to check it out. I guess you can say we were a bit obsessed. Mike and I eventually moved in together into a small apartment. He worked as a security guard overnight, and I worked at a grocery store during the daytime. One night when Mike was off, we sat in the living room and watched the show on the afterlife and what happens after we die. Mike laughed and joked, "If I die before you, I will come back and verbally tell you if I'm at peace or not." I didn't laugh or reply, as I found it to be very immature of him to say something like that. A few months passed. One night, I felt a soft kiss on my cheek, kind of like the ones Mike would always give me as he left and came from work. But he wasn't home yet. That was weird. So I went back to sleep. At around 5:20 a.m. I got a phone call. I couldn't answer it on time. I looked at my phone and noticed 2 missed calls from Mike's sister. She called me back, and this time I picked up. "I need to talk to you now, please," she cried. "I need you to come to our house now, please." I can hear it in her voice. There was something wrong. I decided not to question her, so I told her I'd be there in 15 minutes. I put on my boots and drove, thinking what's going on, and fearing something bad had happened in her family, or worse, to Mike. I called Mike a few times to check up and ask, see if he knew anything about it, and it went straight to voicemail, so I thought maybe his phone was off or something, which was pretty common at work. I finally arrived and saw Mike's whole family there. Everyone hysterical, crying. "What's going on?" I said. Mike's mom broke the news to me and said he had passed away 2 hours ago earlier in a really bad car accident. "What? No, please, what? This is a joke, right?" I broke down in tears as my whole life just ended, or at least it felt that way. I cried like I've never cried before. I was hit by a sudden depression as we saw it on the news. I mean, what do you do when the person you share your life with for the past 6 years was gone? Gone forever. I was so depressed and maybe even suicidal. Mike was my everything. The family arranged his funeral the following week, and of course, I was there. I asked Mike's mom if it was okay if I can record the event as a final memory and farewell to Mike. I was so sad and torn, I still couldn't believe this was real. It lasted for about an hour when it was all said and done. After the funeral, I promised Mike's mom and his family that I would stay in close contact with them. I never felt so lonely in my life before. It felt so surreal that he was actually gone. Time passed, and my depression slowly started to fade. A year and a half after, I moved to South Carolina and started a new life out there with a better paying job, so I didn't have much contact with Mike's family anymore. 2 years later, I was doing some cleaning when I stumbled across a lot of things I had from my relationship with Mike, which still made me sad to think about, but I was finally ready to move on. I found the recording of the funeral footage, which I had never seen before, and I was going to delete it, but I decided to watch it before I did. Everything was the same, just as the day I was there, up until the last part, which really disturbs me till this day. When they were carrying the coffin out of that church that day, you can hear clear as day Mike's voice, calling my name in a scared tone. The problem is, I was there at the funeral from beginning to end, and nobody in that church ever made a sound, let alone my name. I didn't tell Mike's family, and have since deleted the footage and moved on. But that's one experience I will never forget. One calm summer morning, I was taking my usual walk in the park at 5 in the morning to get some exercise before work. I was usually the only one there at that time, but on this specific morning, I saw an older man walking towards me. "Good morning, you're very pretty," he told me. I thanked him for the friendly compliment and introduced myself. His name was Joseph. We talked for a good 30 to 40 minutes. I don't know if he was a psychic medium or something, but he started sharing a lot of things about me that were true. I've never met this person before, so there's no way he could have known all of this. Plus, I've only lived in this town for a solid 7 months or so how did he know all this? He was a sweet elderly man, so I didn't feel threatened by any means. He last told me he walked there at the park every morning around the same time. I came back the next day and saw him there. We decided to take our walk together and talk some more. We must have talked for a good hour or so this time. The more I got to talking to him, the more I took a liking to him. He reminded me a lot of my grandfather. Very warm, sweet-hearted, and caring. Before the sun began to rise, he took notice and said, "I have to go back now. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I hope we meet again whenever God allows us." And then he was gone. I found that to be a bit odd how he said goodbye. The next day I took my walk and he wasn't there. Neither the next week, neither the next month, until eventually I never saw him again. A part of me wondered why. Another part of me got sad and really began to enjoy his company. So I decided to take it upon myself to see if he was okay. I talked to some people in town until eventually I found out where he lives. I went to a small house and knocked on the door. A young girl in her mid-20s opened the door. A bit confused. "Hi, is this Joseph's home? I'm his friend from the park. We used to take walks there. I was told he lives here and decided to check up on him and see if he's doing okay," I told her. She almost immediately turned pale and asked me who I really was. She was so shocked on how I met Joseph. We met a few months ago at the park. You know, the one 3 blocks away from here?" I repeated. She was still in shock and invited me inside the house. I was so confused what was going on here. I didn't know what to expect next. "Is Joseph really here?" I asked. Joseph was my grandfather. He passed away 5 years ago. I felt sick and confused, hoping she was playing with me or something. But the more I saw her face, the more I realized she was not joking whatsoever. She then went on to tell me that he was very sweet and had not many friends. He passed away of natural causes and used to walk that park every single day before he passed. You'd think I'd be scared, but Joseph was never there to harm me or to do bad to anyone at that. But the thought of meeting a deceased individual made me feel crazy, but not in a bad way. I no longer walk that park anymore ever since.